And so I think it's very fitting that we take the time. We have industry champion award presentations. We have 2 of them that we're going to give today. Both of these happen to be in the field related to masonry. We look forward to giving future awards as well in the fields of SRW and for manufactured stone veneer. So these individuals are being recognized today with our highest honor that we can give to those who are not members of the association. And so we're going to turn it over to Rick Roach, who is going to recognize our first recipient.
Thank you, Bob. Well, I've seen Daryl in that dress at the reception. It shows you how desperate we are for checkoff. So it's my pleasure today to present David Biggs, the Industry Champion Award. If masonry ever had a patron saint, it would truly be David Biggs. He's influenced every aspect of masonry. Now, his awards and recognitions take up 2 full pages, and I'm not going to read those to you today. So I thought what I would do is tell you some things about David that you may not know. So David grew up in Troy, New York, in a tight-knit neighborhood surrounding the factories that dominated Troy at the time. David is an athlete. He had a passion for playing soccer in the neighborhoods. And his group of friends are kind of remarkable. His elementary school gets together for reunions every 6 months. They meet for lunch. And David was telling us at dinner last night that at the last luncheon, a woman came up to him and had a photo of David in kindergarten and said she had a crush on him. And David said, why? And she said, you reminded me of Howdy Doody. So you young professionals will have to ask Siri who Howdy Doody was. You've probably never heard. But David went on to play soccer in college at RPI near Troy. And his RPI professors had a lasting impact on David. We were on a conference call with some Masons last week who were pretty stressed out at some minor shrinkage cracks that they had. And David calmed them down by saying that he once had a professor that told him if you didn't want concrete to crack, then you better keep it in a bag. But David went on to graduate from RPI engineering in 1972. And to show you David's devotion to the industry, shortly after graduating, he enrolled in both masonry and welding apprentice programs because David wanted to know hands-on how the materials worked. And this was really a central theme in David's career. Any of us that really know David know his appreciation for the relationship and the difficulties of installation and how that relates to design. He's got a very unique perspective on it. In 1977, David joined together with fellow RPI graduate Tom Ryan and formed Ryan Biggs Associates in Albany, New York. And in one of my early conversations with David, I knew how special he was because he described how he had his young engineers make presentations to his office every week on a technical topic. And the goal was so that not only would they understand and the rest of the office understand the technical topic better, it was so they would sharpen their presentation skills. Now this was at a time in the 80s when engineers were more known for how many pencils they could grab in their front pocket than worried about their presentation skills. But David's always been a student of marketing. In marketing, his firm is the expert in their field. It has always been a priority for David. And that style of leadership, fortunately, has generated 2 generations of structural engineers very strong in masonry, spread out throughout New York State and throughout the country. Nationally recognized masonry experts like Jamie Davis will tell you how much they owe their success to David Biggs. Now, David's firm certainly designed with other materials besides masonry, but it always seemed like David linked the success of his companies to the success of masonry. And, you know, his work with the masonry associations, both small and large in the United States and Canada, and throughout the world, has been legendary. And sometimes people probably wonder, you know, why David donates so much time to work with associations. And the answer, I think, is in the African proverb that David so often cites, that if you want to walk fast, walk alone. If you want to walk far, walk together. And David has a gift of getting groups to focus on common goals and work together. I mentioned earlier how David had the practice of honing his engineer's technical knowledge and presentation skills. He put together a similar program with the New York State Concrete Masonry Association. He took his time to develop a school for block producer salespeople, telling them how to successfully call on architects. He broke down how architects' offices were structured, who you should talk to in the office, even the words that they would want to hear to give masonry fair consideration. He then teamed up with a business development consultant and coached our salespeople in the art of an effective presentation. So for 3 days, salespeople throughout the state normally very aggressively competed with each other, learned how they could work together to increase masonry construction in New York State. David also recognized that by combining reinforced masonry to brace steel frame structures, we could increase sales in the country. And almost single-handedly, he developed a hybrid masonry design concept, convinced national software companies that would sell, they'd be profitable if they took it on. And then he rallied the National Masonry Associations to get behind and fund the development of the software. It was really, you know, it was at a time when I think it's fair to say a lot of our national associations were knocking heads a little bit. And this was the start, I think, of the great cooperation that we have right now. It was the first large national program that our associations co-funded. BIM. So many believe that building information modeling is the most important technical development of our generation. When David recognized that masonry was being left out of BIM, you know, we weren't in the BIM movement at all, he went into overdrive and convinced the national associations to group together and fund it, and then led the effort to raise $2.5 million through donations both big and small to fund the program. David then assembled a team of professionals to help him manage the development of them. I think someday we'll look back and see that this is one of the most important group efforts the industry ever made. Now, David is the ultimate planner, and in 2010, he fulfilled a 10-year plan to sell his interest in Ryan Biggs. He had mentioned to some of us that he was going to do that, but how many people can keep a timetable like that? Well, that's David to a T. He wanted to spend more time pursuing his innovative ideas and lecturing. So David formed Biggs Associates and travels the world lecturing and consulting on all aspects of masonry. He's worked in Egypt, Czechoslovakia, Iraq, Turkey, Italy, and New Zealand on such diverse projects as helping these companies develop their building codes and to preserve their historic structures. Only David could be in the middle of a lecture in Christchurch, New Zealand, when that tragic earthquake hit. And like everything else David does, it was important for David to pass on the information, what he saw, you know, standing in the middle of an earthquake. You know, he's always been so unselfish in what he does. When terrorists struck on 9/11, it was only fitting that David got the call to go to ground zero and evaluate the condition of the buildings that remained. And just like you expected, David prioritized passing on the information and what he learned from the damage of those buildings And he wrote a very sobering book on what all industries could learn from what happened. That book is, I think it's still on TMS and NCMA's website. Probably more than anything else, David is a mason's engineer. He has an appreciation for the challenges that masons face every day out in the field and is constantly working to help masons understand how to make their installations better and easier. David's forensic expertise has built a loyal following of masons across the country. His ability to analyze complex problems and come up with practical solutions has often saved mason contractors who at that time, before he got involved, were getting solely blamed for the failure. His endless energy is amazing. Many of you saw, his photographs with the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who was expressing her appreciation of David's work. One moment he's with a prime minister, the next moment he's driving through lake-effect snowstorms in upstate New York to teach continuing education to rank and file masons. So, not only is David, involved with the National Masonry Associations, the little guys make a big difference to David. And, frankly, they just, for the time he spends with them, they think he walks on water. For relaxation, David and his wife enjoy a camp up in the mountains in the Adirondacks with their kids and grandchildren. But even then, he volunteers his time helping to preserve historic Adirondack bridges and structures. Right now he's working on an ancient war furnace in Tahowas up in the high peaks. Now, some of us were a little worried that he was starting to slow down when recently he stopped playing in an Irish band in the pubs around Troy, New York. But there's no slowing down for David. Right now he's working with the New York City school system on new protocols for the masonry design and the enormous amount of schools that are going to be built in New York City in the next decade. And yes, thanks to David, they are going to be structural masonry schools. At the same time, he's working with historic West Point on trying to figure out why some of their buildings are cracking. But as busy as David ever gets, if one of his friends calls, if one of the masons calls, or one of us in the industry, he's never too busy to drop everything and help us. And everyone appreciates him for that. Bob Thomas said it best when he said there's only one David Biggs in this world, and we should be thankful he is working to support us. So David, now we're going to make you step up here. You don't have a dress on.
So I want to thank everybody for this. Bob and Rick was supposed to say just a couple of words. That was too many. I do want to correct one thing though. The BIM was a major effort, but the original idea all generated from the NCAA. I was just the first call they made to kind of hook somebody to do it. So it was very interesting. So Bob told me I could take a few minutes here to give a little presentation, and he gave me an open